The Silent Watch. Rice sat in the dimly lit cockpit of the stealth ship, the only light coming from the soft glow of the control panels. The vessel, a sleek, shadowy craft designed for covert operations, was almost invisible against the backdrop of the starry void. Rice was glad they had brought the stealth ship with them from Alpha Point after their audacious escape from the Drac ship, what seemed like a lifetime ago. Now, after getting a brief refit by the engineers from the Argus, it was the obvious choice to collect intel on the Drac vessel before the attack was launched. He felt at home on the stealth ship. Outside, the vastness of space stretched endlessly, a cold and unforgiving expanse that had become his hunting ground. The ship was silent, its engines humming at a frequency so low it was almost imperceptible, the stealth systems fully engaged. The Drac reconnaissance vessel loomed in the distance, unaware of the predator lurking just beyond its sensor's reach. Rice had been tracking the Drac ship for hours, carefully studying its movements and plotting its patrol routes. He had overlaid the routes onto his view screen, watching as the ship moved methodically through the sector. It appeared that the Drac ship was attempting to spy on Omega Base, even though it was several parsecs away, well outside the base's sensor range. However, there was an asteroid field between the Drac ship and the base, and it seemed as though the Drac vessel was trying to see through it to gain intelligence. It must have some advanced sensors if it could. The implications of this made Rice uneasy. The Drac were masters of warfare, and if they had developed a way to bypass the base's natural defenses, it could spell disaster for the Rebel Alliance and their newfound allies. Rice leaned forward, his eyes narrowing as he studied the holographic display before him. The Drac ship was a menacing presence, its dark hull blending seamlessly with the surrounding space. He could see the faint outlines of its patrol routes, the way it moved methodically, sweeping the area with its sensors. But Rice knew the Drac well, too well in fact, and there was something off about their movements. They were cautious, almost as if they were expecting something. His mind raced with possibilities, each one more concerning than the last. A soft chime interrupted his thoughts, alerting him to a new development. The Drac ship altered its course slightly, moving closer to the edge of the system to try a new angle through the asteroid field. Each new position change increased the danger that the Drac would be able to collect more intelligence for their command. Rice frowned, his fingers tapping a series of commands into the console. The display zoomed in, giving him a clearer view of the ship's trajectory. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, but the Drac were definitely changing their pattern. Were they preparing to leave, or were they about to transmit something back to their command? Rice couldn't afford to take any chances. He needed to report this immediately, but sending a communication while still in proximity to the Drac ship was risky. Despite the stealth systems, there was always a slim chance that the transmission could be detected. Rice made a quick decision. He maneuvered back toward a nearby gas giant. With the Drac ship looking toward Omega Base and the magnetic field of the gas giant, he should be able to send a condensed data burst with his update and have it go undetected. The screen flickered to life, displaying the secure connection to Omega Base. Rice typed in a series of codes, encrypting the data burst before it was sent. This was no ordinary transmission. Every byte of information had to be shielded from interception, not just by the Drac, but by any other potential threats lurking in the shadows. The message was brief, but detailed, providing Commander Vance and Prince Arlon with the latest intel on the Drac vessel's location, movements, and the possible implications of its recent activity. Rice also included a recommendation for immediate action, emphasizing the need for a swift strike to prevent the Drac from gathering any more intelligence on rebel movements. He also highlighted a specific vector of approach for the strike, ensuring that the Drac ship wouldn't detect their arrival until it was too late. As he finished the transmission, Rice felt a knot of tension in his stomach. The Drac were always a step ahead, always calculating their next move. The fact that they were this deep in the system, potentially gathering intel, was a threat that couldn't be ignored. He needed to ensure that when the attack began, the Drac wouldn't have the opportunity to send a warning to their fleet. Rice set the ship's systems to standby, ready to deploy electronic countermeasures the moment the Argus and the rebel ships arrived. With the message sent, Rice turned his attention back to the Drac ship. He re-engaged the stealth systems, once again slipping into the shadows. The Drac vessel continued its patrol, oblivious to the predator watching from a distance. Rice settled in for the long wait, his eyes never leaving the display. Every movement, every change in course was logged and analyzed. The Drac were up to something, and Rice was determined to figure out what before it was too late. Meanwhile, back at Omega Base, preparations for the strike were well underway. The Argus, the Federation's most advanced battleship, stood ready at the heart of the fleet. Surrounding it were 5 rebel battlecruisers, their crews making final checks before departure. The atmosphere was charged with anticipation, every soldier and officer aware of the importance of the mission ahead. Failure was not an option. They had to destroy the Drac vessel before it could relay any valuable information back to the enemy. Lyra, who was staying behind at Omega Base, was hard at work in a secure briefing room. They were going through the Alpha Point logs, matching up specific data points going back several months, trying to identify rogue transmissions, personnel logs, Drac activity, and suspected sabotage. The walls were lined with screens displaying intelligence reports, intercepted communications, and security logs. She sat at a central console, her brow furrowed in concentration as she sifted through the data. Her task was no less critical than the one Rice was undertaking. The presence of a spy within their ranks had been a constant thorn in their side, and it was Lyra's job to find them before they could do any more damage. It was hard and detailed work, but they could get through it and whittle down the list of suspects. She was not alone in her efforts. The chief security officer of Omega Base, a seasoned veteran with a reputation for thoroughness, stood beside her, offering insights and guidance. Together, they pieced together the fragments of evidence, looking for patterns, inconsistencies, anything that might lead them to the traitor. The pressure was immense, but Lyra was determined. The safety of the entire alliance depended on rooting out this threat. In the shadows, Draven was taking an interest in what Lyra was up to. He could see her going through reports and logs, trying to work out and narrow down the data to isolate the actions of the spy. It was going to take Lyra a while, but he needed to be careful. He had always been meticulous in covering his tracks, feeding them just enough false leads to keep them occupied. Now, as Lyra delved deeper into the reports, Draven watched from a distance, planning his next move. If she got too close to the truth, he would have to act, swiftly and decisively. The hunt begins. Commander Ilara Vance stood at the edge of the hangar, her gaze fixed on the towering form of the Argus. The ship was a marvel of Federation engineering, sleek and powerful, its dark hull lined with the latest in advanced weaponry. Around her, the hangar buzzed with activity as technicians and crew members made final adjustments to the fleet preparing for departure. The 5 rebel battleships that would accompany the Argus on this mission hovered nearby, their crews moving with purpose and determination. Vance's mind was focused on the task ahead. The Drac reconnaissance vessel, lurking somewhere in the system, posed a serious threat to the Rebel Alliance's operations. If it managed to escape and relay any intelligence back to the Drac Dominion, the consequences could be disastrous. They couldn't afford to let that happen. She turned as Prince Arlon approached, his expression mirroring the gravity of the situation. Dressed in the practical attire of a leader accustomed to battle, Arlon moved with a quiet confidence. His eyes, however, held a steely resolve, sharpened by the knowledge of what was at stake. "Are we ready?" Vance asked, her voice steady. Arlon nodded, glancing at the rebel battleships. "The ships are prepared, and the crews understand the importance of this mission. We must destroy that Drac vessel before it can report back to its fleet. Any slip-up could jeopardize everything we've worked for." Vance looked back at the Argus, its massive silhouette dominating the hangar. "Rice's intel has given us a critical advantage. We'll approach from the vector he recommended, staying undetected until we're in range. Once we're close enough, we'll hit them with everything we've got." Arlen's face hardened. "We're dealing with a recon ship, but we can't underestimate the Drac. If that ship gets away, we lose more than just the element of surprise. The entire alliance could be compromised. We have to make sure it's destroyed, quickly and efficiently." They walked together toward the Argus's boarding ramp, their footsteps echoing in the cavernous space. The tension between them was intense, a shared understanding of the mission's importance. As they ascended the ramp, Vance turned to Arlen, her expression thoughtful. "We've come a long way since this alliance was first forged," she said. "Our forces are stronger, more unified. But the Drac have always been a step ahead. This mission is our chance to change that, to show them that the Federation and the rebels are not to be taken lightly." Arlon met her gaze, his resolve unwavering. "This mission is about more than just taking out a single ship. It's about sending a message. The Drac need to understand that we won't be intimidated, that we'll fight for every inch of this galaxy. With the Argus leading the charge, we'll make sure that message is clear." As they reached the top of the ramp, the hatch to the Argus opened with a hiss, revealing the advanced command deck within. The bridge crew was already at their stations, monitors and displays flickering with data as they prepared for departure. Vance and Arlen took their places at the front of the bridge, their presence commanding the attention of the entire crew. "Commander Vance," the communications officer called out, "all systems are green. The fleet is ready to depart on your command." Vance exchanged a brief look with Arlon, who gave a single, firm nod. She then turned to the crew, her voice clear and authoritative. "Prepare for departure. Set course for the coordinates provided by Rice. Maintain radio silence until we're within striking distance." The crew moved with practiced efficiency, the Argus humming to life as its engines began their low, steady rumble. Vance watched the status displays as the massive ship prepared to leave the safety of Omega Base. The risks were high, but the necessity of the mission was undeniable. The Drac vessel had to be destroyed, and with it, any chance the Dominion had of gaining crucial intelligence on their operations. The hangar doors began to open, revealing the vast expanse of space beyond. The rebel battleships, already in formation outside the base, awaited the Argus to take the lead. Vance felt a familiar tension in the air, the calm before the storm, as the fleet prepared to move out. "Engage engines," Vance ordered, her voice firm and unwavering. The Argus began to glide forward, the hangar falling away as it entered the void. The rebel battleships fell into formation behind it, their sleek shapes cutting through the darkness. As the fleet moved into position, the mission was underway. The Drac reconnaissance vessel was out there, and soon it would meet the full might of the Federation and the Rebel Alliance. "Let's remind the Drac why they should fear us," Vance said quietly, more to herself than anyone else, as the fleet sped silently toward its target. Lyra's investigation. Lyra sat in the dimly lit intelligence room at Omega Base, her eyes scanning the streams of data on the screens before her. The room was silent except for the soft hum of the machinery and the occasional beep as new information filtered in. She had been at this for hours, poring over data logs, personnel records, and suspicious transmissions. The task was exhausting, but the stakes were too high for her to rest. Somewhere within these files was the key to unmasking the spy that had been feeding the Drac vital information. She was focused on matching data points from Alpha Point, cross-referencing personnel logs with the timing of suspected sabotage incidents. It was a meticulous process, requiring both sharp analytical skills and an instinct for when something didn't add up. Lyra was nothing if not thorough, but the sheer volume of information was overwhelming. A shadow fell across her screen, and she looked up to see Draven standing in the doorway. He wore his usual calm expression, but there was something in his eyes that made Lyra's instincts twinge. Draven was Prince Arlen's younger brother, a figure both respected and trusted within the Rebel Alliance. His close relationship with the prince made him seem untouchable, someone beyond suspicion. "You've been at this for a while," he said, his tone easy, almost too casual. "Need a hand?" Lyra hesitated. Draven's status as Arlen's brother meant that few would dare to question his motives, yet something about his sudden interest in her investigation made her uneasy. Still, she forced a smile and nodded. "Sure, another pair of eyes wouldn't hurt. This data is a mess." Draven stepped closer, glancing at the screen. "Where are you in the process?" "I'm narrowing down the list of suspects," Lyra replied, trying to keep her tone neutral. "There are just so many factors to consider. Timing, access, and patterns of behavior." "Sounds like a tough job," Draven said, leaning in slightly. "I'll do what I can to help." As they worked together, Lyra kept a close eye on Draven. He seemed genuinely interested in the investigation, but there was a subtle way he steered her attention away from certain files, redirecting her focus whenever she got too close to anything that might implicate him. Lyra couldn't shake the feeling that something was off, but she couldn't quite pinpoint what it was. Despite her unease, Lyra decided to keep Draven close. If he was the spy, it was better to have him where she could watch him. She would play along for now, but she was determined to uncover the truth, no matter how deep it was buried. Even if it meant confronting someone as untouchable as Draven, Prince Arlen's own brother. The assault. The Argus and the rebel fleet emerged from hyperspace at the coordinates provided by Rice, the vastness of space stretching out before them. The Drac reconnaissance vessel was there, just as expected, its dark, menacing form floating silently among the stars. It was a small ship by Drac standards, but its importance was clear. It was a scout, a vessel sent to gather intelligence on the movements of the Rebel Alliance and the Federation. If it managed to relay any information back to the Dominion, it could spell disaster for the fledgling alliance. On the bridge of the Argus, Commander Vance stood with her arms crossed, her gaze fixed on the enemy vessel displayed on the main view screen. Prince Arlen stood beside her, his expression hard, his eyes narrowing as he studied the Drac ship. "Rice, are the countermeasures ready?" Vance asked, her voice calm but carrying an underlying urgency. Rice's voice crackled over the comms. "Ready and waiting, Commander. I'll engage them the moment we're in range." Vance nodded, her mind racing through the battle plan they had devised. The element of surprise was on their side, thanks to the intelligence Rice had gathered. They had approached from the vector Rice recommended, staying well out of the Drac ship's sensor range until the last possible moment. Now, it was time to strike. "Prepare to engage," she ordered, her voice steady as she addressed the crew. "All ships split into two groups. Group 1 with the Argus will approach from the starboard side. Group 2, take the port side. We need to box them in. Target their engines and communication arrays. We need to disable them before they have a chance to escape." The rebel ships, positioned in two tight formations around the Argus, moved into attack positions. The tension on the bridge was thick, the crew's focus sharp as they prepared for the battle ahead. "Firing solutions are ready," one of the tactical officers reported. Vance glanced at Arlon, who gave a firm nod. "Rice, engage the countermeasures," Vance ordered. "Countermeasures engaged," Rice confirmed, the hum of electronic interference filling the comms as the stealth ship jammed the Drac vessel's communication systems, ensuring that no distress signals could be sent. "Engage the enemy," Vance commanded. The silence of space was shattered as the Argus and the rebel ships opened fire in unison. Beams of energy and torpedoes streaked across the void, converging on the Drac reconnaissance vessel. The Drac ship reacted almost immediately, its engines flaring to life as it attempted to evade the incoming fire. But the Argus and the rebel ships were prepared for this. Their weapons fire was precise, calculated, designed to cut off any escape routes. The first volley of shots slammed into the Drac ship's shields, causing them to flare and waver. The Drac ship returned fire, its phaser cannons blazing as it fired back at its attackers. One of the rebel battleships in Group 2 took a direct hit, its shields flickering under the impact. Alarms blared on the bridge of the Argus as the damage reports came in. "Port shields on the Tiberius are down to 60%, a tactical officer reported. "Reposition that ship! Keep it out of the line of fire!" Vance ordered, her voice calm despite the situation. "Group 1, continue the assault. We can't let them escape." The rebel ship in Group 2 moved to a safer position, its weapons still firing as it maneuvered to avoid further damage. The Drac vessel, realizing that it was outnumbered and outgunned, tried to break away, its engines flaring as it attempted to flee the battle. But the coordinated fire from both groups of rebel ships and the Argus kept it pinned down, unable to escape. Vance watched the battle unfold, her mind working quickly. "We need to capture that ship," she said, thinking aloud. "There could be valuable intel on board." Arlon nodded in agreement. "Agreed. Disable their engines, but avoid critical systems. We need that ship intact." The combined firepower of the Argus and the rebel fleet was overwhelming. The Drac ship's shields buckled under the relentless assault, and the Argus's main cannons scored a direct hit on the vessel's engines. The Drac ship lurched, its engines sputtering and failing as it lost power. Still, it fought back, firing off a few desperate volleys that damaged another rebel ship, but it was clear that the battle was already won. "Engines are disabled," a tactical officer confirmed. "They're dead in the water." Vance allowed herself a small, grim smile. "Prepare boarding teams. We're going to—" Her command was cut off as the Drac ship suddenly shuddered violently. On the view screen, the vessel's hull began to glow with an eerie light, and before anyone could react, the ship exploded in a blinding flash of light, the force of the blast sending shockwaves through the surrounding space. "Damn it!" Vance hissed, slamming her fist on the console. "They self-destructed." The bridge fell silent, the crew processing what had just happened. The Drac had destroyed their own ship, ensuring that no intel would fall into enemy hands. Arlan looked over at Vance, his expression one of shared frustration. "Another Drac behavior we'll need to be wary of," he said, "but at least we prevented them from gathering any more information." Vance nodded, her anger subsiding as she recognized the small victory they had achieved. "We stopped them from transmitting anything back to their fleet. That's something, at least." The Argus and the rebel fleet began to regroup, setting a course back to Omega Base. The victory was significant, but Vance knew that the real challenge lay ahead. The Drac were a relentless enemy, and they would not take this defeat lightly.